the question around the mass Socialist Party, I think that resolution has been taken. What we're grappling with is the nature and form, and the question of when are we doing that. We've got a clear mandate that says we must come and talk to yourselves as the left forces. I think it's very boring you wouldn't come here tonight if you're a liberal right-wing person. You come here because you are left, you follow the trends globally and so forth. And I think we should thank you for spending time to come and engage with us. And I think the nature and form of the movement that Numsa would end up launching it can't be defined by us. I think the working class all over the world must see that as an important revolutionary task for all of us. We have refused to jump into a jackpot of chasing the dates for elections. Mostly because we've voted, so we know that there's nothing that's going to change. I mean, people are going to vote, and the sun, Marxism is very good. It says that there's no sun that rises and do not set. But also it says that what appears today is also on its way to disappear. So yes, we're not rushing to do that. We basically will be championing struggles for workers. For instance, on the 19th of March, we have got a stay away. We will take the working class to the street. And as we take the working class to the street, that's a form of education. We're raising levels of consciousness of the working class. We will be presenting the Numsa policy positions and resolutions that we've taken. We think it's important to be able to do that. Are we not under pressure? Yes, the working class is saying, you are delaying us. They say when you are Sbambezela, they are in a rush. They say, where is this political party? We think that the issue is to take up their issues. Since 20 years that have come and gone now, we have destroyed so many comrades. We send them to parliament, and when they are there, I mean, you can see them sleeping in parliament, and the working class life has not changed. What kind of education are we doing? Well, it's a difficult one. I mean, Numsa is, first we do spend time on the preamble of Numsa as an organization. For us, it is important that the working class must have a very clear working class perspective. It must know who they are as workers, that they are very important people. It is them who produce wealth. So we do spend time on that. And I must say that we're now talking about mobilization. Why suddenly must we mobilize? This South African working class was very organized in the 80s, and many of you know that. And it is not uncritical, unconscious, but the neoliberal agenda, which is very well coordinated, which is very smooth, which speaks nice, which has got resources, that owns means of production, is very good at demobilizing. I mean, one of the things that they will do, for instance, in the point of production, they will co-opt workers in the presence of a union. And the fact that you're a union leader, many of us makes a mistake, that if you happen to be the general secretary, then you no longer read. When there's a workshop, you don't sit down. You are on a phone. That's what leaders do, and we're talking to important people. In Numsa, all of us were the same. Those who are in leadership, they must know that they are privileged to be in leadership. You are in leadership today, you might not be in leadership tomorrow, because we don't issue adverts to look for shop stewards. Shop stewards must be there where workers are exploited. They must be facing the concrete conditions of workers. Because Karl Marx teaches us this. He says it's not the consciousness of man that determine their being, but the environment. So shop steward must be rooted to the conditions of workers. They must speak on behalf of workers. And our union basically teaches shop stewards and members. You see, members can also be very dangerous. Well, anybody with no politics is dangerous. We teach workers to understand that the union belongs to them, which is why they must have their own general meeting to democratically elect leaders of their own choice, and they must do that consciously. And those who are elected must accept the responsibility to represent workers consciously, because they must cease to be themselves once they accept the responsibility. They must subordinate themselves to workers and their own interests. And our union operates on the basis, we say it's a worker control union because it works on the basis of mandate and accountability. And I mean, we spent time with CAW when Sam and them were still there. And by the way, they did caution us when we were very excited about that democratic breakthrough of 1994. In 1995, I was still very young, Sam. I remember really asking you very hard questions with Leo. But one of the things we noticed and we were cautioned about was how capitalism is able to demobilize. I take the experience in South Africa in the 80s and early 90s. If management was to dismiss a worker, this used to be an injury to one, injury to all. Dismiss one, dismiss us all. There will be a stoppage in the plant. Workers were organized, defending themselves. Even in taking up a case of a worker, we used to take an organizational approach. A shop steward will not go to a hearing to try and defend a worker. First, the shop steward must go to a general meeting and say, Amandla. In South Africa, when you say Amandla, they say, no, too. Meaning, power is our unity. You take one of us, you must know that you are in trouble. The shop steward, we used to go there and explain that so-and-so who's our member, he has been charged by management. This is what management is alleging. Workers debate the case before a shop steward go into the case. As the shop steward goes to the hearing, management know that even workers, they want to know what are the outcomes of this case. But well, we now have got the Labor Relations Act. Now with the Labor Relations Act, it is us, the union, who tell workers and tell a member that no, yeah, you are dismissed, we will refer your case. A worker is dismissed, is looking in your eyes, what's going to happen? No, we'll do a referral. This referral meaning that it's a dispute of rights, you can't strike, you must follow a particular process, a third party who knows nothing about what is happening in the factory will now decide the plight of that worker. But also to deal with the militants that used to be in South Africa. They introduced corporatist institutions. For instance, NEDLEC. What is NEDLEC all about? We wanted to strike, now will tell you, on the 26th, because that was the budget day, to reject the youth wage subsidy, which launches an offensive and attack workers who basically have got experiences, who are paid a living wage. And basically, what the National Treasurer is doing is bribing young people. I mean, a young person who would have been taken to school under very difficult conditions in the villages, where an old mama with no husband would sell eggs to support his child. When he finish, his son or a daughter and has got a diploma, he will now, in South Africa, through the tax incentive bill, instead of, there's a policy which agreements we've reached with employers. After 3 months, a worker, once he knows how to produce, that worker must be paid a living wage. We fought for that. But the incentive tax bill will bring now a young person and he will be paid a stipend. By whom? By our own taxpayers' money. So do you think that employers are going to retain and keep old workers who are costing them when they can access cheap labor to be exploited, which is young people? So they will use that process to displace workers. So I'm raising that we got NEDLEC, for instance, where we said we refer that we want to have a strike, and look, they can delay. Basically, those corporatist institutions are about nothing. They are a platform to promote class harmony in a class-divided society. So Sam, I'm saying we will spend time in our education to our shop stewards to teach them that multinationals, for instance, all over the world adopted Japanese management technique. I've got nothing against Japanese, but Japanese management techniques, dangerous. All companies today, all over the world, are talking about competitiveness, are talking about world-class production. If before workers work in different departments, they are called into green areas in terms of Kaizen. They are told, no, they are not told, they are asked. They are told, first, it's a 5-minute talk. Can you tell us something? And it's done democratically among themselves. They must elect a team leader. And the team leader is paid a little bit better so that he must take responsibility. And the team leader facilitates discussion and he asks one question. What can we do? He's asking the workers in the team, what can we do to help you to work easy and to work smart? I don't know, something fun about workers. They like to work easy and to work smart. They start to smile. And then they make suggestions. And 5 minutes is up, they will tell them that, look, there in that corner, there's a suggestion box. In your own time, during your lunchtime, make suggestions, put them there. As they work, they are being monitored in terms of economics, their movement, and their restructure. If the 3 of us who used to work in this department, 1 will remain, the 2, they will be told that you will be part of a labor pool. Again, workers smile. They say, no, I'm part of a labor pool now. So, but I don't want to ask, but do you know what is a flexi pool? No, I'm part of a flexi pool. And then the next thing, if somebody is not at work, that worker must go and be there. Within a week, that worker is angry. He comes back if there's a union to ask, but why am I a shift spanner? I also want to have a job. But initially, he agreed to be part of a flexi pool. Within no time, they will serve the union. In South Africa, there's 2 Section 189 for retrenchment. If it's a big number, it's Section 189A. After 60 days, at least the union can strike if the alternative that it has advanced are not accepted by management. But if there's no A, after 60 days, hamba kai, students pelil, there's no job. But if you train shop steward very well, Sam, you will tell shop stewards is that a Numsa shop steward that is well trained will ask a fundamental question. Therefore, is productivity for what? Is competitiveness for what? For whom? If basically you continue to shift volumes of production, but on the other hand, you destroy buying power. And if this company is doing this, and the company in Canada and the company in South Africa is doing the same, and we can conclude that the biggest challenge we're sitting with now globally, it's not because people have stopped to look for products. There are still demands. We still need cars. We want to drive cars and everything else. There's a need. But capital, because it's not producing to satisfy the needs of the people, it is producing for greed. It destroys buying power. It is not producing, and therefore there are no jobs. So the crisis, the global crisis of capitalism, is not just as other people would want us to believe as a financial crisis and so forth. This is also a crisis of capitalism. So my concern is that we need to beef up. And one comrade was saying, all other unions, many unions, they speak English with no science. That's what you were saying. There's no revolution in this English. My view is that that can't be the task that must be left only to trade unions. I was speaking to Sam last night, and I was very, Sam and Leo are very rough sometimes. And I think we as the advanced detachment of the working class, as the left forces, we need to take ourselves very serious. If capital is so organized, you will never hear capital complaining about other capitalists. Even if they didn't meet in one meeting, they advance the same line. But I can tell you there are anarchists here. There's one I saw here, one comrade who's an anarchist. Can we clap hands for anarchists there? Look, as the left forces, sometimes we get divided. Sometimes we get so critical of each other. And in that process, capital wins the day. And I'm saying, I think we need to be very hard on ourselves as the advanced detachment of the working class. Including, and I was saying to some, including being free to say, Jim, I'm coming to South Africa. I want to have a meeting with your NOPs. I have decided that we must talk about this particular issue. We'll certainly listen. We will open up space and so forth. I mean, capital is basically continuous in a continuous process of restructuring. It is imposing its hegemony over the state. It is us in every election who mobilize, and there's a voting day. We take a leader of our choice, he becomes the president. On the day of inauguration, he's voted into power by the working class, but he immediately becomes the CEO of the dominant class that exploit the very same working class that put him into power. And therefore, I think that's class struggle, and class struggle is not a dinner party. It's going to require that we must be very hard on ourselves. Trade unions, in my view, this thing, I accept that trade unions are reformist in character. For instance, as I speak, as I continue to articulate the views mandated by members, we should be going back to workers. Because the agenda and the propaganda that get deployed by the enemies of the revolution, within no time, revolutionary project gets squandered. And therefore, the advanced detachment of the working class must take it as a momentary task to raise levels of consciousness of the working class. Unless we agitate the working class, unless we raise the levels of consciousness, it will be won over. Because capital, you know, if they want us to eat rice, they will make sure that we eat rice, Chicago Bulls. They define development out of their own image. I was in the university today, and I was telling the knowledge production cadres there that there's no neutral education. Knowledge and knowledge production is dominated by the dominant class in society. It's like you going with your kids, and first you look where the sweets are located, and nice chocolate. Sometimes you must check whether the child is enjoying chocolate or is busy with the branding that is following the chocolate. You know, it's very important to be dynamic. I mean, children will say, look, we want to go to this spare. You think that they want to go and eat. No, they're going there for something completely different. It could be toys. I'm just saying capital is powerful. And unless we raise our bar in challenging this system, which in my view does not have solutions that confront humanity, we will not be able to win the day. How did you not respond to Numsa? Hey, it's a difficult one. They are still responding. I think Numsa have broken new ground, and we don't want to blame any union for the kind of resolutions that Numsa have taken, because Numsa traditionally have been a very diverse union, militant union. The very Freedom Charter, when it was introduced, Numsa was very critical of the Freedom Charter. We're one union that have allowed all schools of thoughts to exist in the union. But once decisions are taken, everybody must follow the line. There we are Stalinists. There's no permanent debate. And I think I've answered the question of alternative, the land question. I think the land question, I was saying 87% of the land is still as it was during the apartheid era. And I don't think that we will be able to address both the land question or the property question, which is the property question. Because Section 25C of our bourgeois constitution, which is renowned as a miracle. Do you know Madiba's miracle? Miracle in my eyes. You know, South Africa's constitution has been renowned as a miracle. But there's Section 25C there, which says, yes, the state can expropriate. But you must read that section very well. It says, if the state decided to expropriate, first it must go out in the market and check the market value of any property or the land. And it would have to replace value by value. Meaning that South Africans who are white who own the land. Remember how they got the land, no? It was through a barrel of a gun. And now we must negotiate, please, land. Fine. That's what happened. But with the land that they occupy, you can't have that land. You would have to give them the market value of that land. And you can ask the question, why did people then have to die for our revolution? Why did we have 4 pillars of our struggle? Why did we trouble you in solidarity? If what was taken will not be brought back to the ownership of the people as a whole. So the land question is the class question in South Africa, is the ownership question, is the property question, which must be resolved if the revolution in South Africa is going to have a meaning. And in our view, as Numsa, is that constitution needs to be changed. There will be people who will have flu when that happens, but look, we can give them medication, they will be right. Because we're not doing it in order for only blacks to have the land. Land must be accessible to both black and white, and the state can be a custodian of that land and support you when you basically become productive to that land. But we know what has happened. I mean, even those people who were given land, that land is not productive. I mean, the irrigation scheme and the infrastructure that used to be there has been allowed to basically collapse because the state does not intervene in the economy. People are given land with no solid support that can ensure that they are able to be productive. We must learn and learn, and there has been a resolution taken that we must really take time to study those revolutions. Of course, revolutions don't get transplanted. What works in one country will not work in another country. But socialism can't be built in one country. Socialism is international in character. And yes, we must sort out our own bourgeoisies in our own different nation state, but we can only learn from each other. And I think we've got a lot to learn from the Cuban Revolution. We've got a lot to learn in what is happening in Latin America. We've got to learn from you guys here. I mean, what you're doing and what you're not doing and what you should be doing. We're learning. So we're not stopping to learn. So I think you're right. I mean, in South Africa with colonization, we have got colonization of a special type. I mean, the colonizer is with us in the same setting. We need to deal with that.
In Judith Marshall's paper, she talks about the way in which Numsa, at this recent event, was reaching out to organizations in civil society, like the Anti-Privatization Forum and a whole range of things. I'm just wondering how you see a movement developing that, in a sense, it goes beyond the Numsa membership, goes beyond even the working class, somewhat narrowly defined, and begins to integrate a whole range of struggles that are taking place on the ground, who are there to become part of a movement for change in South Africa. And I'm just wondering if, my question would be, how do you see that evolving, the relationship between the trade unions and people organizing around different issues in South Africa that are not contradictory to the union interest, but are additions to it and need to be integrated into a larger program?
The question you were raising about the United Front, I think what you guys should be doing is to contribute. There is no concluded view about the nature and content of the United Front. There's a framework. There's a clear framework that we are consulting at local level, at provincial level. There will be provincial conferences. There will be a national launch of the United Front. And we're not seeking to give people positions. We're not in a business of giving people positions. We're in a process of mobilizing the working class to the street around its own concrete programs. Now, I think the nature and form is a dynamic process. And my view is that I think Numsa, as Judith is saying, is open to suggestions. We have taken a decision to consult a wide variety of organs of people's power, various organizations, be it women's structures, everybody is welcome in the United Front that we would launch. We know that South Africa is rich with activism, both old and young, people who knows how to take up bread and butter issues that affect our people. Because we have got concrete, people don't have water, people need houses, people need proper infrastructure, and we need a state that must actually intervene in those particular challenges. So I'm saying, I think people understand what we'll be doing about the United Front, but I'm also saying we're open to engagement. I mean, we can be separated by rivers and forest, but we're facing the same capital, and therefore we should act locally to impact internationally. I think one of the things that capitalism, that works against capitalism, is that it has smashed distance itself. I mean, with technology today, we can always talk as if we are next door. So I think it's important that we must coordinate the revolution. I was saying that to the labor movement, the unions that I've spoken to here, that is one thing to meet at once and then we will meet again in 2 years' time, when in fact we're supposed to be promoting worker-to-worker conduct, union-to-union conduct, but also to promote the fact that we can't just be narrowly focusing on those workers who pay dues. The working class is the working class, both those who work and those who do not, who are not being exploited. So how do we close that gap between the unemployed and those who work? It's basically a struggle, which is not a difficult struggle, because all of them, they don't own means of production. They are victims. Those who are looking for jobs, they were retrenched, so they know how to struggle against capital. Numsa and EFF. Who was asking that question? It's a very hot question in South Africa, because one of the things that Malema did and the Youth League of the ANC, who were all dismissed. They were dismissed for purely saying the Freedom Charter must be implemented. So, which is why Numsa will not be spared for calling for radical program. So we're very similar in that sense. But we have not taken a decision to work with the EFF, as I was explaining, that Numsa have taken a decision not to support any political party currently. We think that it is important for us not to cease to be a union. Numsa will continue to be a union that represents workers, but Numsa will continue to be a catalyst to ensure that there is a united front, to make sure that there is a vanguard party that doesn't speak English without science. A vanguard party that speak in the interest of the working class, that raise levels of consciousness, that agitate the working class, that educate the working class, that smashes backwardness within the working class. With all that, we know that we must fight against tribalism, we must fight against regionalism, and so forth. We need the vanguard party, which basically explain work to workers that the struggle for wages is a narrow struggle if you're only looking at it. It's only broad if you link it to an understanding that if workers are paid a fraction of wages, that fraction, which is too little, can only buy them a squatter camp. When in fact, though, instead of looking for a half a loaf of bread, you need to be looking for the old baker. So I mean, we need vanguardism, and vanguardism, I don't mean it literally. I know Leo is. I mean, committed, advanced detachment of the working class that act in the interest of the working class on consistent basis. So somebody was saying, watch out to, don't collaborate. I agree, Sisi, we shouldn't collaborate. But it's very important, again, as Marxists, to always go beyond appearance. In other words, any situation, including the Numsa moment, you must debate Numsa moment, you must critique Numsa moment, you must make suggestions. As Marxists, we're different to a church. You know, in the church we sing. If Mfundisi is finished to preach, we say amen. In Marxism, there's no amen here. We dialogue, we engage. So we can talk about the scenarios in what you were raising about Numsa and VW, how you perceive what has happened there. I would differ with you that Numsa was collaborating. I remember very well, at the time, I was the chairperson of Numsa in the Eastern Cape, exactly where those workers were dismissed. We had a situation where basically workers were being misled. And they were not even misled by a political party. It was a union called OGAU, which is organized by an individual. Yes, when workers went there on a strike, I guess all of us, we must support them. But you must support them you must be clear. I mean, if workers are basically demanding UIF, you know, UIF in South Africa, it's either you are retrenched or you lost your job, then you can go. I mean, there was a lot of confusion. And of course, Numsa never claimed that we've been able to clarify that particular impasse that existed between Numsa and those members. Hence, when finally workers were dismissed, they were massively dismissed. It was 1,300 workers. They were dismissed by the bosses because we did everything else to try and persuade them. But there was one man who was not even working at VW. He was working next door. His name is Ndandani. And he is on suspension, but he goes and leads a strike that he knows nothing about. And Vavi and myself, who were there on that night in a hall, we didn't run away from workers. We went there in the hall to persuade them. And the bosses, as you know them, they gave them final notice. They finally dismissed them. But I mean, as Numsa, we launched a particular institution there that championed that their sons and daughters must still be employed. Because once workers have lost their jobs, who were old, closer to retirement, there's no replacement for that. It's a loss. And they have lost their jobs, and the bosses win when the working class is divided. I mean, there was a question about neoliberalism in the United Front. How different will we be?
Working with different sectors and
I think
classes.
What should encourage you is that we are committed. We don't want to change different organizations, but those organizations represent the working class. We represent the working class. There is no enemy within our ranks. What we're dealing with is neoliberal, and it's a problem. We think that there is solid basis where we should be humble enough to be able to have a common programs and pursue those particular programs in the interest of the working class, where we must be able to deploy solidarity around concrete struggles that we must take where the working class is basically being ravaged by the neoliberal agenda. So I think tolerance is going to be the way to go, and it's a very difficult process. I mean, people have got views, so we should be able to do that. We all know, I mean, there is a triple oppression of women. They are exploited like we are exploited. They are exploited at home. Patriarchy plays a very critical role at home, and in the workplace, they are looked down upon. But I mean, what is the issue? The issue is equality between men and women. The issue is to be able to challenge stereotypes that continue to be the order of the day. And look, we're making progress, but we're not making progress. And I think it's going to require that in our programs that we take, we must address the gender question as a fundamental question. I think men must be liberated from themselves to appreciate that there is nothing that men are doing which women cannot be able to do. So I think it's part of a very important program to prioritize the gender equality, both at home and in the workplace and in society generally. Thank you very much.